Yamunatira Vanacharya Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jayam Vishnupad Paramhansa Brahmadakacharya Asadhara Sadushi Shiman His Divine Grace Shalisi Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Gaur Premanande Haribo Glorious to these sound devotees All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharane Nirvishesha Shinivadi Paskyadyade Sadharane Om Agyanativanandasya Gananjana Salakaya Chaksuramilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stabitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Tadati Swapadantikam Bandeham Shri Guru Shri Uta Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavam Scha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Prijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Visakan Vitam Scha Hey Krishna Karna Sindhu Dinabando Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Prishubhanu Sudadevi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakapa Turvyascha Kripa Sindhu Vyevacha Patiranam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Pranitinanda Shadwaiti Gadadhar Shivasati Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 9, Dhruva Maharaj returns home, text number 33. Daivim mayam upashritya Prasupta iva binadrik Tajiye dvitiye yasati Bratri Bratritya Ridruja Daivim Maya Mayam Upashritya Prasupta Eva Binadrik Tapye Dvitiye Yasati Bratri Bratrivya Ridruja Maya Bhashitya Prasupta Eva Binadrik Tapye Dvitiye Yasati Ratri Britrivya Ridruja Daivim Maya Bhashitya Prasupta Eva Binadrik Tabye Vatiye Yasati Bratri Bratri Aridruja. Ladies. Daiva Maya Upashitya Prasupta Eva Binadrik Tapye Dvitiye Dvishasi Bratri Brati Aridruja Daivim, the personality of Godhead. Mayam, the illusory energy. Upashitya, taking shelter of. Prasupta, dreaming, fall asleep. Eva, like. Binadrik, having separated vision. Tapye, I lamented. Dvitiye, in the illusory energy. Api, although. Asati, temporary. Bratri, brother. Bratrivya, enemy. Rit, within the heart. Ruja, by lamentation. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Dhruva Maharaj lamented. Sorry. I was under the influence of the illusory energy, being ignorant of the actual facts. I was sleeping on her lap. Under the vision of duality, I saw my brother as my enemy, and falsely I lamented within my heart, thinking, they are my enemies. Purport. Real knowledge is revealed to a devotee only when he comes to the right conclusion about life by the grace of the Lord. Our creation of friends and enemies within the material world is something like dreaming at night. In dreams we create so many things out of various impressions in the subconscious mind. But all such creations are simply temporary and unreal. In the same way, although apparently we are awake in material life, because we have no information of the soul and the supersoul, we create many friends and enemies simply out of imagination. Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami says that within this material world, or material consciousness, good and bad are the same. The distinction between good and bad is simply a mental concoction. The actual fact is that all living entities are sons of God, or byproducts of His marginal energy. Because of our being contaminated by the modes of material nature, we distinguish one spiritual spark from another. That is also another kind of dreaming. It is stated in the Bhagavad Gita that those who are actually learned do not make any distinction between a learned scholar, a brahmana, an elephant, a dog, and a chandala. They do not see in terms of the external body. Rather, they see the person as spirit soul. By higher understanding, one can know that the material body is nothing but a combination of the 5 material elements. In that sense, also, the bodily construction of a human being and that of a demigod are one and the same. From the spiritual point of view, we are all spiritual sparks, parts and parcels of the Supreme Spirit God. Either materially or spiritually, we are basically one. But we make friends and enemies as dictated by the illusory energy. Dhruva Maharaj therefore said, Daivim Mayam Upashitya. The cause of his bewilderment was his association with the illusory material energy. So the text again. Daivim Mayam Upashitya Prasupta Eva Binadrik tapye dvitiye yasati pratri prativya ridruja. Dhruva Maharaj lamented, I was under the influence of the illusory energy, being ignorant of the actual facts. I was sleeping on her lap, under the vision of duality. I saw my brother as my enemy, and falsely I lamented within my heart, thinking, they are my enemies. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Śrīmate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namane Namaste Sarasvatundeve Gauravani Bacharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paskadyade Satarane. According to the Bhagavad Gita, there are two subject matters of Bhagavad Gita, maybe three, depends how you look at it. Krishna, this is the 4th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, the last verse, 42. And there Prabhupada explains that actually Bhagavad Gita, the knowledge it's giving, is knowledge of the soul and knowledge of the super soul. And if you want to add another one, you can add the relationship between the soul and the super soul. So here it says one of the most recurrent themes in the Bhagavad Gita is that all the souls are spiritually equal. And the bodies are different, but that's not the major point. The major point is the equality of the soul, of the souls, and the whole purpose of the material creation is to wake up the soul, and when the soul becomes awake, he sees everyone as, just like he is, a spiritual being. And therefore the difference, materially speaking, becomes practically unimportant. And this is practically in every chapter of Bhagavad Gita, beginning with Deno Sminyata Dehe, Komaram Yovanam Jara, that the body's changing. So all our near and dear body that we have right now, I'm sorry to tell you, it just disappeared. No one knows where it went. And the body we just got right now is going to just disappear too. So we may be somehow or another identified with this body, but which body? Now, due to illusion, we don't really care which body we have. We love it anyhow. Even at the time of death, when the body is not usually in a very pleasant condition, still we're very faithful. So that shows that the soul by nature is quite faithful. It's a quite good, it knows how to worship very nicely. There's only one problem: we don't know what the actual best object of worship is. And therefore we're worshiping so many things, so many different bodies, and we're not getting exactly what we want. Love and affection in return. Therefore Krishna says there's a process. It's not, in the Bhagavad Gita, it doesn't tell us just love Krishna. It also gives us a process by which we can learn to love Krishna. Even the Ashtanga Yoga process, if one follows it, which believe me, I've tried, doesn't work. Then, still you have to go through the same process we're going through. Before I joined the movement, 1968, I had some kind of quote, mystical experiences. I thought I was a kind of yogi. And I thought this is the path, because I actually had some genuine experiences, but not very, compared to Krishna consciousness, it's not even worth talking about. I remember one time I was sitting with Srila Prabhupada, because in Buffalo there was not so many devotees. I think we were a fairly big temple. We had 5 devotees in it. And so when Prabhupada came to visit us in 1969, I had the opportunity to sometimes sit with Prabhupada in the morning before I went to college for 2 or 3 hours, and Prabhupada would talk to his guests, or he'd talk just, if I was there, he'd just talk to me. So one time Prabhupada was speaking to me for some time, and my mind wasn't so controlled in one sense. I was getting a little bored, so I decided I'd try to see Prabhupada's effulgence, his aura. So as soon as I tried to do that, Prabhupada looked at me and said, "Our process is not Ashtanga Yoga, it's Bhakti." So that was the last time I ever attempted to see anyone's aura. So I actually, when I joined, I had some belief that the process of self-realization was, doing yoga and meditation. And when my friend, who later on joined at the same time I did, a little before me, his name used to be his name was Jagadish, and he told me that there was a center opened in Buffalo because I was looking for a center to study with. So I went down there, and they said, well, actually in beginning of '68, one of my friends taught me the Hare Krishna mantra. I didn't know what it was, and he didn't know what it was either. But I chanted it sometimes. But then I found out, they were telling me when I went down to the center that this is the process of the age. So I said, what do you mean this is the process? It's just chanting Hare Krishna, this is ridiculous. You can't even touch your toe, you doesn't help you at all. So I used to argue with Rupa Nugaprabhu, who's the temple president, because we had classes at the university. But I was always defeated, so then I realized if you can't beat him, you might as well join him. So it's almost a little inconceivable to a materialist that just by chanting some mantra, chanting some names, you can actually make any spiritual advancement whatsoever. But Bhagavad Gita says that even the yogis have to come to a certain point of understanding that jnana vijnana chiptatma kutasta viditatmanaha, that one is considered to be advanced in knowledge, theoretical and practical, when one sees everything the same. Pebble, a stone, and a piece of gold. He sees all these with an equal mind. So that's Brahman realization, which is actually quite an advanced stage of realization. But then Krishna says, samam, what does he say? Surin mitra udasina madhyasta dvaisha bandishu. Thank you. Sudu shapi trapapeshu samabuddhir vishishate. One is considered to be further advanced when he sees everyone, Sarit, the madhyasta, the dvaisha, bandishu, all the friends, all the envious, the sinful, the pious, the indifferent, everyone with an equal mind. And this is a theme that Krishna keeps on speaking about, just like it's quoted here. Vidya vinaya sampane brahmani gavi hastani shuni chaiva swapake cha pandita samadarshana. That the humble sages, by virtue of true knowledge, see with an equal vision the learned and gentle Brahman, the cow, the elephant, the dog, and the dog eater. Now, the true equality is on the basis of the soul. It's not that the learned Brahmins thinks, well, here's a lion, and you and me and the lion, we're all the same, and according to Bhagavad Gita, I should surrender to the lion and ask for forgiveness for all my offenses. So let me go to the lion cage, enter into it, and give him full dandavat, saying, please forgive me. I didn't realize we were both equal. I brought you some prasadam. And the lion thinks, oh, thank you very much. I think you're offered, right? No, we have to also see the difference externally so we can serve the soul properly internally. It will not be beneficial to the lion to eat the devotee. We have better things to give him to eat. But at the same time, we can chant Hare Krishna to the lion. That would be a more appropriate way of helping him. When Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was lamenting that how are these non-living entities going to be delivered? So Haridas Thakur told Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, don't worry, my Lord, because just by the loud chanting of Hare Krishna, even the non-living, moving living entities will also be delivered. And the echo that they're making is their chanting. So we have to see externally the difference, just like when Shukadeva Goswami had finally got out of the womb of his mother, which was quite a relief for her, especially since it was 16 years he was there. A little late delivery. So finally Krishna convinced Shukadeva Goswami, it's time to leave. Your mother's feeling a little inconvenienced. And don't worry, you're not going to fall into the illusory energy, I promise you this. So Shukadeva Goswami said, all right, I believe you. He wouldn't believe his father. Why wouldn't he believe his father? Because his father was a householder. And he understood that he had the interests of his mother at heart. And that maybe he'd tell him something just for the sake of his mother. So he said, well, my father is, at least, he's a household. He's supposed to be somewhat under the illusory energy. And besides that, I've been here for a long time and my mother's probably complaining, so my father may want to get me out of there. So he would trust Krishna. So Krishna came from Dwarka to ask him to leave. He said, don't worry, you won't get, the illusory energy won't affect you. So he finally left, much to the relief of his family. But they didn't really want him to leave. Not the way he left, because he just walked away. His father ran after him, because, I would be attached to Shukadeva Goswami too. He was my son. So Shukadeva Goswami was passing by a group of ladies who were bathing in the lake, some lake, and they're all uncovered. They were all nude. But they didn't pay any attention to him because they knew he was innocent. He didn't see their bodies, he saw themselves as souls. It's not that he didn't see the body, but he didn't really care about the body. He saw the soul was much more important. So they didn't bother dressing themselves because they understood he was innocent. But when his father, who was chasing after Shukadeva Goswami, walked by, and they covered themselves immediately. So Vyasadeva was wondering, what's going on? My son, he's self-realized, I appreciate that. But I'm also self-realized. Why me? Why you're so disturbed about me? I'm a self-realized soul. She said, then the ladies told Vyasadeva, he said, yes, we understand you're also a self-realized soul. But you're playing the role of a householder. And you're supposed to be able to discriminate or differentiate between yourself and your wife. Otherwise, how can you be a householder? Because nowadays it might not be true anymore. But generally speaking, that's to become a householder, you have to have that discrimination between male and female. So at least out of social custom, they put their clothes on when Vyasadeva passed by. Now we ourselves, we probably are not most of us are not we don't have the vision of seeing only the soul. Not that we don't see the body, but if they actually had the vision of seeing the body, we'd see it was a bunch of elements. We wouldn't see it as, something as attractive as we might see. We see it's a combination of the material elements. Some of them are more attractive, and some of them are less attractive. But after all, it's the material elements. But the soul is so beautiful, it's so attractive, millions of times more attractive than the external body for a self-realized soul, that they don't really think it's very significant. Whatever the body may be, they respect it, but it's not the center of their attraction. The soul is so attractive, the super soul within the soul is so attractive that everything else, the material body, is also attractive because it's the energy of Krishna. So everything about Krishna is attractive. Am I going too fast, by the way? Okay. Good translator. So the body is also attractive. This material world is attractive. But compared to Krishna, compared to the soul, it's not very attractive. Now, in the meantime, as conditioned souls, we have to at least theoretically understand things properly so that we can try to act properly. As Prabhupada writes in the Bhagavad Gita, we actually don't work with the body, although it appears like that sometimes. But we act first with the mind and the intelligence. So first of all, we have to hear the knowledge and then try to apply it. Now, this knowledge is such that how to apply it. There are many books written about how to win friends and influence people, etc. But our main process is to see things from the perspective of actually what's going on, a holistic approach that Krishna and his acharyas in disciple succession give us, namely, Ishvareta Dadineshu Balishesu Dvitsatsucha Prema Maitri Kripo Peka Yet Karoti Samadhimaha. That our theoretical vision is that Krishna is all worshipable. That he's the proprietor, that he's the enjoyer, and that he's our best friend. Now, in the mode of ignorance, we generally think that I'm the proprietor. And in the mode of passion, when we get a little more elevated, we also think I'm the enjoyer. And in the mode of goodness, we think we're the deliverer. We give salvation to others. We're the friend. But we have to understand how Krishna is the friend, how Krishna is the enjoyer, how Krishna is the controller. So therefore we try to utilize our energies in Krishna's service, we try to act for Krishna's enjoyment, and we try to be the friend on behalf of Krishna, Krishna's instrument. So that's the Sankirtan movement. To engage our energies, whatever we have, to engage our minds, following the instructions of hearing our intelligence and mind, following the instructions of Krishna's representatives, for the sake of actually helping others. Because naturally the soul wants to help someone, if not himself. Even if we don't want to help anyone else, at least we want to help ourselves. So if we understand our real interest is to help Krishna, and to do that we have to take our energies, whatever they are, and engage them in this Sankirtan movement in order to please Krishna and his acharyas. So Srila Prabhupada was the perfect example of that, one who dedicated his life completely for the mission of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mission. Now sometimes it's a little confusing because, as it says here, which I don't know the verse. You know the verse? Krishna Chaitanya Dvaita, Advaita, Abheda, Mano Dharma. Thank you. So this is called Mano Dharma. From our materialistic point of view, there's good and bad. And indeed, from the materialistic point of view, I'm not going to say it's all good or it's all bad, but it's all material from our material point of view. And therefore, whatever we do, good or bad, ultimately it's all bad. Because without Krishna consciousness, the soul is not doing very well. It's like trying to feed Prabhupada gives the example. If someone is drowning in the ocean and you want to save them and you jump into the ocean, you swim over there and you grab his shirt, his jacket, his tie and everything else and you pull it out of the water and the poor person is left drowning, but you come back and you show, I got his coat, I've saved him. someone will probably say, well, don't you realize he's not the coat, he's not the jacket, he's drowning in the ocean, he's going under, you didn't save him at all. So in the material conception of life, so many people are trying to save the hat, someone's trying to save the coat, and everything that he's wearing, but the person is drowning in the ocean. So the real thing is to save the soul. Otherwise, it's monodharma. It's just on the mental platform. Now, the Sankirtan movement, Srila Prabhupada showed us how to spread it. And sometimes, even devotees don't, from my point of view at least, this is my understanding, they don't understand that what Prabhupada did was simply to help the soul. Not only the soul, of course, that would be a misrepresentation. Prabhupada also understood the value of helping the body also. Prabhupada was expert at different sciences like Ayurveda, and he also knew other sciences like that. So he understood the value, because if the soul is distracted by the problems of the body or the mind, it's more difficult to become conscious of Krishna. But the main emphasis is on the soul, on trying to help the soul. So sometimes Prabhupada would be in a conversation with someone and they'd say something. And from the materialistic point of view, from what we consider to be socially acceptable, the Prabhupada would say something which is not socially acceptable in that particular time, place, and an audience. He mentioned something about the moon, or about race, or something like that. And in another circumstance, it would be considered to be agitating to people's minds. But he wasn't in that circumstance. He was in a particular time, place, and circumstance. And sometimes, rather than to contradict people on every point they were making, Prabhupada would sometimes even not mention something, or maybe he would even agree with it from a certain point of view. And then he'd preach Krishna consciousness to them. He didn't try to agitate their minds by getting into an argument over something mundane. He tried to act appropriately so their minds were peaceful, and then he could actually interject some Krishna consciousness into the circumstances. And at other times, in Prabhupada's books, he mentioned things. But generally speaking, in conversations, many of Prabhupada's conversations were not meant for general distribution, because Prabhupada wasn't talking to the general audience. He didn't have a microphone for the whole world, or he wasn't doing a morning walk, the whole world was there. He was talking to a specific person under specific circumstances and giving specific instructions. Therefore, when Prabhupada was in a morning walk and they asked Prabhupada, well, sometimes it appears that you commit mistakes, that you fall asleep, or that you quote a verse wrong, or other times it appears that you're committing a mistake. And Prabhupada said, actually, that may be true in one point of view, but from the spiritual point of view, the perfect acharya doesn't commit any mistakes, because everything he's doing is for the Sankirtan movement. And therefore there's no mistake. Because Krishna is there, the acharyas are there, everyone is there. Prabhupada was a perfect instrument for the previous acharyas. He didn't make any mistake. From the material point of view, there's no problem that thinking that Prabhupada may have misquoted a verse. It's not that. I saw one conversation where the reporter asked Prabhupada something about who's going to be, I forget the exact thing, but anyhow about his spiritual master, and he answered something which was obviously, from one point of view, wrong. Probably didn't hear the question properly, or whatever. So it appears he made a mistake, but does that mean at that particular moment he wasn't in touch with Krishna and the acharyas, and he was just answering from a mundane point of view? No, he was perfectly in touch always with Krishna and the previous acharyas, and he was a perfect instrument for them. Nimitra matram bhavasava sachin. And everything he was doing was to please Krishna. Everything he was doing is out of service to his spiritual master. Everything he was doing is to unite the devotees together to inspire them to help the conditioned souls, the innocent people, become conscious of Krishna. And everything he was doing was meant to teach the devotees how to not take so seriously those who are not helping them become conscious of Krishna, how to become detached from those things that draw our mind away from Krishna, and from those people who try to draw our minds away from Krishna. So Prabhupada was acting as a perfect Madhyama Adhikari and teaching us how to act as a perfect Madhyama Adhikari for the sake of spreading Krishna consciousness and realizing, developing compassion. Atmo pamyena sarvatra samam pashati arjuna sukham vadi vadukam sa yogi paramo mataha. That he is the true yogi Arjuna who sees the true equality of all living entities, both in their happiness and distress. Now, we may not have love for all living entities. We may not have compassion for all living entities, but if we act as an instrument for the perfect souls and for those who represent the perfect souls to different degrees, an acharya such as Srila Prabhupada was a perfect transparent media for the previous acharyas. And others who are following Srila Prabhupada, they're also to different degrees, maybe fully or maybe less fully, transparent medias to the previous acharyas. So if we follow them, then we get their association. And if we get their association, that we'll feel their compassion. And when we feel their compassion, that's how we feel our own compassion. We can't feel compassion. It doesn't awaken without feeling the compassion for those who have compassion. Now we ourselves, Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema Shuddha Kavanoi Shravanadi Shuddha Chite Korye Udor. That love for Krishna, that love for all living entities is dormant in our heart, but it's awakened by hearing from the self-realized souls, for those who have realization, by getting their association. Then our compassion, our love for all living entities, by their mercy, by the mercy of Krishna, the Dhammi Buddha Yogam Tam, then it's awakened, our natural love. But then we have to understand that there's a process of doing that, and both theoretically and applied. That we have to serve in the Sankirtan movement of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in this age, or else there's no possibility, practically speaking, of awakening our compassion, our love for all living entities, our love for Krishna, and our detachment from those who draw our minds away from Krishna. But if we follow the process, simple process, chanting Hare Krishna, worshipping the deities, hearing Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, and living in a holy place, serving the devotees. And part of living in the holy place in this age is to serve the Sankirtan movement, to go out and preach. Preach internally in the temple, make it spiritual. Making it spiritual doesn't mean just, worshipping the deities, which is also very spiritual, in the association of devotees. But making the atmosphere spiritual means to hear from the devotees, to appreciate what the devotees are doing, how they're chanting, how they're serving, and cooperate with them. That makes the atmosphere spiritual. And outside, to see that all these living entities, they're not American, they're not German, they're not British, whatever. They're all spiritual beings. They're all exactly the same as we are. We were in that same position they were in, but due to the compassion of the acharyas and their representatives, the devotees, we've gotten the opportunity to become conscious of Krishna. And they can also get the opportunity. Now it's not equal. We go on Harinam because whether they like it or not, unless they cover their ears, which sometimes you see, they're going to be benefited. Something will be awakened in them. Eventually, their normal state of being will be awakened by the mercy of the devotees who are going out on Harinam, representing our acharyas. And we give them some prasadam. When I was in the marathon this year, I spent some time, that some of one of the techniques the devotees gave, we had a Harinam party in Slovenia, and then we had book distributors. So the devotees would give some prasadam. And when the people took the prasadam, their hearts melted a little bit. Enough to put when you put the book, they noticed they had a book in their hands. And they got under the influence of the internal energy enough, they actually gave a donation. So prasadam is, we have to soften our hearts by Harinam, by Kirtan, by prasadam, and then they might take a book and get some transcendental realization, knowledge. So there's a process by which even the worst there's so many stories, if you read them, how some people, devotee going up to this person, he had no money, he was a beggar on the street, he was asking for money. So the devotee went up to him and said, can you give, Vaishya Sikapuru tells the story. He went up to him and said, can you give a donation? He gave him a book, he said, can you give a donation? So the beggar was so shocked, he took all his collection that he had that day and gave it to Vaishya Sikapuru. So it's possible. Anything's possible. I remember one time I was at the airport, and I was just in Charlotte, North Carolina, with another devotee. And we were distributing books there, and one person came by, and he was like blaspheming us and shouting at us, cursing us, and he went the other way. He went to he thought he went to his gate. He came back shouting and cursing at us. He went the other way. And he came back the other way. Back again. We thought, now he's going to shout and curse at us. He came and he said, what do you have in your hands, by the way? And he looked at it and he said, how much is it? And he gave a donation. So it's rare, but it's possible. So we have to see who sometimes you don't know who you're dealing with. But we have to try to see who we're dealing with and give them appropriately something so that they can make a little advancement in Krishna's service. So there's nothing better than that. And when we go out on book distribution, when we go out and preach Harinam, part of the reason we do that is so we come back to the temple, and even the devotees in the temple, we might even see as devotees, potential devotees. So that's great spiritual advancement. Then we can actually act with them. Because familiarity sometimes breeds contempt. So we get familiar. So we go out and these people are really nice. Especially the ones who give donations. They must, there is a soul there. And then we come back to the temple and we think, well, maybe there's a soul here too. Maybe I got to change the way I deal with things, or people, the devotees. And then when we do that, we see how nice the devotees are. Then we come back and we go out and we think, yeah, why don't you come to the temple? It's not so bad. It's actually quite nice. The people there are quite nice, Nice prasadam, nice people, deities, and it's, come by, It's feast on Sunday, You'll love it. So both of them, they reciprocate. The Pancharachika Vidi and the Bhagavat Vidi, Bhagavat Marg, they both work together. We have a nice program in the devotees. We listen to them, hear how nicely they chant, see how nicely they serve. We go out inspired to bring people to the programs in the temple so they can also enjoy their life in Krishna consciousness with the devotees. And then those of people who come, they develop Krishna consciousness, and they go out to bring others to Krishna also, back to the temple and to our programs. And that way Prabhupada gave us a perfect program so we can make spiritual advancement and eventually love Krishna and love everyone too. Everyone appropriately according to their relationship with Krishna. So I'll stop there. Thank you. Any questions or comments? Comments? What time are we supposed to end, by the way? 9 o'clock? Oh, we may end a little earlier. Yes. Do we have usually sometimes we have microphones, but I don't know. Okay.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Maharaj. I had a question because you mentioned how we should even have compassion for those who distract us. And I found that quite a striking statement. And sometimes when we see that there are distractions on the path of devotional service, at least on a personal level, my instant reaction is, I would even say, despise and hatred. I tend to then reject and have a mood of hatred towards something that distracts me. And it's not so much compassion.
Well, if you have a mood of hatred to something that distracts you, you're not distracted. You are distracted, I should say. So, hatred, attraction, whatever, these are all Maya's more or less tricks to allure us away from Krishna. So that's normal. It's not unusual. But as far as we don't, those things that are distract us, usually we're trying to cultivate at least upeksha, indifference towards them. And the only way we can actually cultivate indifference towards anything is by focusing our mind on Krishna. Focusing mind on Krishna means focus our minds on Krishna's representatives too. Service to them. And ultimately service to them means they bring us to Krishna, to concentrating our minds on Krishna. Then we can actually see things properly. If we see things in Krishna consciousness, then we don't feel any hatred or complete or attraction for anything, because we understand this is all arranged by Krishna to teach us detachment from these things so we can focus our minds upon Him. The whole idea is that Krishna sends so many pleasant and unpleasant things to us, so we have an opportunity to not become attracted, not become averse to these things, but to understand, all right, they're coming, let me focus my mind on Krishna and see how to act appropriately under these circumstances. Just like Queen Kunti said, so many bad things happened to her. I mean, who can imagine? If we take prasadam today and they decide to try and poison us, we probably wouldn't appreciate the cook very much. But they gave Bhima a birthday cake, and it was poisoned. So how did he feel? Probably not very, he got a stomachache. Then they threw him into a lake full of poisonous snakes, and the poisonous snakes bit him, and they counteracted the poison, so he felt pretty good. And then they put him to a house full of, put it on fire, his cousin brother, trying to burn his family to death. And they escaped, went into the forest. The first person to greet them invited them for lunch, for supper actually, it was supper. Unfortunately, they were on the menu. He wanted to eat them. So many problems, brahmastras, atomic weapons thrown at them. And Queen Kunti's praying, more problems, let's see more problems, just more. We don't have enough problems. How many of us pray like that? Yesterday there weren't enough problems. I prayed, Krishna, please tomorrow, send me some more problems. As I usually say in Kali Yuga, we don't have to pray for problems. We're so fortunate. They just come one after another, even without our prayers. But she's praying for problems. Why? Because whenever there was a problem, she and her sons focused their minds upon Krishna. And when they focused their minds upon Krishna, they made advancement in Krishna consciousness. Even such great souls as they were unlimitedly learning how to focus their minds upon Krishna and give their love to Him. Like Ambarish Maharaj. When Durvasa Muni threw a fiery demon at him trying to kill him, I mean, generally most of us would at least duck. But he just stood there and he closed his eyes and tears came from his eyes. So we think, well, obviously he was crying out of fear. But no, he was crying out of ecstasy. Because he was concentrating his mind upon Krishna. Let the fiery demon come and kill me, as Pariksha said. Let the snake come and bite me. But let me concentrate my mind upon Krishna. And because he concentrated his mind upon Krishna, he was in ecstasy, no matter what happened. He wasn't going to die. The soul is eternal. But the soul, his real life, is in Krishna consciousness. So he took it as an opportunity to let me concentrate my mind upon Krishna. Similarly, the Pandavas did the same thing. Because by concentrating our minds upon Krishna, there won't be any more seeing of birth and death and all these problems. So that's one way of looking at it. Usually considered the best one. Does that answer your question?
Yes, Maharaj, thank you.
Any question? Anything else? Thank you. Grantharaj Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaur Premanande Hari Bol. Mm-hmm.